In the early 2000s, Silicon Valley buzzed with the promise of disruption. It was a place where audacious ideas met limitless capital, where young visionaries were celebrated. Amidst this vibrant landscape emerged Elizabeth Holmes, a Stanford dropout with an unusual intensity and an even more unusual ambition. She was poised to become the youngest self-made female billionaire, hailed as the next Steve Jobs. Her company, Theranos, was not just another tech startup. It promised to revolutionize healthcare, democratizing access to crucial diagnostic information. Her story began with a conviction that traditional blood testing was cumbersome, expensive, and outdated. Elizabeth Holmes' vision for Theranos was breathtakingly simple yet profoundly revolutionary: to perform a vast array of blood tests from just a few drops, collected painlessly from a finger prick. No more large, intimidating needles, no more expensive lab fees, no more long waits for results. Her technology, she claimed, would put accurate, comprehensive diagnostic information directly into the hands of consumers, making preventative healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone. It was a promise that resonated deeply, tapping into a universal desire for better, more convenient healthcare. This was the dream she sold to the world. The genesis of Theranos can be traced back to 2003. Elizabeth Holmes, then a 19-year-old chemical engineering student at Stanford University, had a bold idea for a wearable patch that would test blood and administer drugs. She dropped out of Stanford in her sophomore year, using her tuition money as seed capital. With the unwavering support of her professor, Channing Robertson, she transformed her concept into a full-fledged company. This bold move, reminiscent of Silicon Valley's legendary founders, instantly painted her as a fearless innovator, willing to forsake traditional paths for groundbreaking ambition. In the early years, Holmes began building her team, starting with her former Stanford professor, Channing Robertson, who became her first board member. Crucially, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, an older, experienced entrepreneur with no medical or scientific background, joined Theranos in 2009. He quickly became Holmes's romantic partner and the company's president and chief operating officer. Balwani exerted significant control, establishing a culture of fear and secrecy that would define Theranos for years. Together, they formed a formidable, albeit controversial, duo, steering the company's direction with an iron grip. From its inception, Theranos was shrouded in extreme secrecy. Employees were compartmentalized, working on small pieces of the technology without understanding the full picture. Strict non-disclosure agreements were mandatory, and any questions about the technology's actual capabilities were met with hostility or dismissal. This opacity extended to the scientific community. Unlike other biotech firms, Theranos published no peer-reviewed research, nor did it openly present its technology for external validation. This deliberate lack of transparency would become a critical warning sign, fostering an environment where misrepresentation could thrive unchecked. Elizabeth Holmes was a master storyteller. Dressed in her signature black turtleneck, she presented Theranos not just as a company, but as a moral imperative, a mission to save lives. Her captivating charisma and the sheer audacity of her vision convinced some of the most astute investors in Silicon Valley to pour hundreds of millions into Theranos. They bought into the narrative of a revolutionary device that would disrupt a multi-billion-dollar industry. The promise of incredible returns, coupled with Holmes's compelling persona, overshadowed any due diligence that might have raised red flags. Investors were entranced by the dream. Theranos' board of directors was unprecedented for a health technology startup. It included former U.S. Secretaries of State George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of Defense William Perry, and future Secretary of Defense James Mattis. These were not scientific experts, but political titans. Their presence lent Theranos an air of unparalleled credibility and gravitas, suggesting that if these formidable figures believed in Holmes, then the technology must be sound. This powerful endorsement served to silence skeptics and attract even more capital, further insulating the company from critical scientific examination. The biggest milestone came in 2013 when Theranos announced a groundbreaking partnership with Walgreens, one of the largest pharmacy chains in the U.S. The plan was to install Theranos wellness centers in Walgreens stores nationwide, allowing customers to get quick, affordable blood tests right in their neighborhood. This deal catapulted Theranos into the national spotlight, promising to make Holmes' vision a reality for millions. It legitimized the company in the public eye, signaling that Theranos was ready for prime time and transforming its ambitious claims into tangible services available to consumers. At the heart of Theranos' promise was the Edison machine, a purportedly revolutionary device capable of running hundreds of tests from a tiny blood sample. However, the reality was starkly different from the marketing. The Edison device was plagued by technical limitations and could, in fact, perform only a limited number of tests. For many of the tests Theranos offered, the company secretly relied on conventional, off-the-shelf analyzers, often diluting the precious finger-prick blood samples, which compromised accuracy. The Edison, rather than being a triumph of engineering, was largely a prop and a grand illusion. Beneath the surface of Theranos' impressive facade, a different story was unfolding. Scientists and engineers within the company knew the technology was failing to deliver. They reported wildly inaccurate results, constant breakdowns, and an inability to scale. Efforts to raise these critical concerns were routinely suppressed. Dr. Ian Gibbons, a respected biochemist, repeatedly warned Holmes and Balwani about the device's flaws. Tragically, in 2013, facing immense pressure and the ethical dilemma of his work, Gibbons died by suicide. His death served as a grim testament to the toxic internal environment and the ignored warnings. Despite the internal turmoil and the significant technological hurdles, Theranos' public profile continued to soar. Elizabeth Holmes became a media darling, gracing magazine covers and speaking at prestigious conferences. Investors, blinded by the perceived potential and impressed by the star-studded board, continued to pour money into the company. By 2014, Theranos reached its peak valuation, a staggering figure that placed it among the most promising startups in Silicon Valley. It was officially a unicorn, valued higher than many established companies, a testament to the power of a compelling narrative over tangible results. In late 2014, a persistent journalist at the Wall Street Journal, John Carreyrou, started hearing whispers of trouble at Theranos. He was known for his rigorous investigative reporting. Carreyrou began a painstaking process of contacting former employees, gathering documents, and piecing together the fragmented story of a company operating under a veil of secrecy. His relentless pursuit of the truth, despite immense pressure and legal threats from Theranos, marked the beginning of the end for the billion-dollar fraud. He sensed that something was fundamentally wrong, and he wouldn't let go. Carreyrou's investigation gained crucial momentum with the courage of several whistleblowers, most notably Tyler Schultz, the grandson of board member George Schultz, and Erica Chung. Both were former Theranos employees who had witnessed firsthand the fraudulent practices and technological failures. They risked their careers, reputations, and faced severe legal harassment from Theranos to speak out. Their testimony, detailed and damning, provided the concrete evidence Carreyrou needed to expose the truth. Their bravery was instrumental in dismantling the illusion Holmes had meticulously constructed. On October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published John Carreyrou's bombshell article, titled "Hot Startup Theranos Uses Traditional Tech for Most of Its Blood Tests." The report meticulously detailed how Theranos was performing only a small fraction of its tests on its Edison device, relying instead on modified commercial machines. It exposed the company's egregious accuracy problems and highlighted the culture of fear. The article sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley and the healthcare industry, instantly shattering the carefully crafted image of Theranos and its charismatic founder. The truth was finally out. The Wall Street Journal's revelations triggered an immediate avalanche of regulatory scrutiny. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, launched an investigation into Theranos' unapproved devices. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, found critical deficiencies at Theranos' Newark, California lab, threatening to revoke its license. Later, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, initiated an inquiry into whether Theranos had committed securities fraud by misleading investors. The intricate web of deception began to unravel under the relentless pressure of federal investigations, each agency uncovering more layers of the fraudulent enterprise. The regulatory crackdowns had immediate and devastating consequences for Theranos. In January 2016, CMS informed Theranos that its Newark lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. Faced with mounting evidence of fraud and the severe threat to patient safety, Walgreens, Theranos' crucial partner, announced in June 2016 that it was terminating its partnership and closing all Theranos wellness centers. This decision was a catastrophic blow to Theranos, cutting off its primary public interface and symbolizing the total erosion of its credibility. The public rollout had become a public retreat. By March 2018, the legal walls closed in completely. The SEC charged Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani with massive fraud, alleging that they had engaged in an elaborate, years-long scheme to deceive investors. The complaint detailed how they had made false and misleading statements about the company's technology, business, and financial performance. A few months later, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California filed criminal charges against Holmes and Balwani for wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The meteoric rise had given way to an undeniable collapse, now facing federal prosecution. With its technology debunked, its partnerships dissolved, and its leadership facing criminal charges, Theranos' fate was sealed. In September 2018, the company announced that it would cease operations and liquidate its assets. The dream of revolutionary blood testing had vanished, leaving behind a trail of devastated investors, disillusioned employees, and patients who received faulty test results. What began as a bold vision, lauded by media and industry giants, ended as a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and outright deception. The billion-dollar valuation dissolved into nothing. After years of investigations and delays, a highly anticipated criminal trial of Elizabeth Holmes began in August 2021. The trial, held in San Jose, California, drew intense public and media attention. Prosecutors laid out a compelling case, presenting evidence from whistleblowers, former employees, and investors, all painting a picture of deliberate deception. Holmes took the stand in her own defense, portraying herself as a well-meaning entrepreneur who had been manipulated and abused by Sunny Balwani. The narrative shifted from a promising innovator to a defendant fighting for her freedom, captivated by the justice system. In January 2022, after a lengthy trial, Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. She was acquitted on 4 counts related to defrauding patients, and the jury was deadlocked on 3 others. The verdict marked a definitive end to her persona as a visionary entrepreneur. In November 2022, she was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison, a sentence that began in May 2023. Her conviction sent a strong message to Silicon Valley that even in the pursuit of groundbreaking innovation, outright deception and fraud will not be tolerated. The promise of revolution ended in a cell. Ramesh Sunny Balwani, Holmes's former romantic partner and Theranos COO, faced his own separate trial. He too was found guilty in July 2022 on all 12 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, encompassing both investors and patients. In December 2022, Balwani was sentenced to 12 years and 11 months in prison, with his sentence commencing in April 2023. The parallel convictions underscored the joint nature of the fraud. Both individuals, who had once stood together at the pinnacle of Silicon Valley hype, now share a similar fate, facing years behind bars for their roles in the Theranos deception. The rise and fall of Theranos serves as a profound cautionary tale, leaving a lingering shadow over Silicon Valley's culture of fake it till you make it. It exposed vulnerabilities in venture capital due diligence, the power of charisma over substance, and the dangers of prioritizing hype over scientific integrity. While the industry continues to innovate, the Theranos scandal has prompted increased scrutiny and a demand for greater transparency, especially in sensitive sectors like healthcare. The story of Elizabeth Holmes is a stark reminder that even the most ambitious visions must ultimately be grounded in truth, ethics, and demonstrable science.